Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new season of Viking Soundbites. I'm Tom Moore from VikeFans.com, and as always, I'm joined by former NFL linebacker and now game day color analyst for the Minnesota Vikings, Pete Persich. I got to say, Pete, I went on a couple of days vacation. I come back and look on VikeFans.com website, and now I see you have top billing. What's up with that, and what insight from being a former player and coach can you bring to Viking fans in 2017?
Well, I'm always working, and when the cat's away, the mice play. So I saw an opportunity for a hostile takeover while you were out and about doing whatever you do, and it was successful. So now you work for me.
I know it. My seat wasn't even cold.
No, I'm excited. I'm excited about it. I'm excited about what you've already done and what Bike Fans has already done in bringing Viking news and updates and interviews and all kinds of information to fans all across the country, and I'm happy to be part of it. And we want to grow the brand and cover the Vikings like nobody else.
Well, you said it right. I mean, if we're going to grow that brand, it's all about talking to the Vikings, to the fans. And, they haven't played a game since New Year's Day against Chicago. There sure is a bunch of Viking news. You want to dive right into it?
Let's do it.
All right. Well, you know what? For you, it's got to be odd. You kind of started your broadcasting career the same time that Adrian Peterson started in the league. And this season, when it kicks off, it's going to be the first time you haven't seen Adrian Peterson in the Minnesota backfield. And, almost every NFL player's career, and it ends by being released. A lot of guys don't get the chance to retire, so you know what that feeling is like. Why did the Vikings finally decide to let Adrian walk? Or do you think they may have offered him a contract and he didn't want to stay?
That we don't know. What we do know is that they were not going to keep him for what they owed him under the current contract. So when you release a player, someone can claim them off waivers and pay the rest of their contract. That did not happen either. No one, I don't think, was willing to pay $18 million, to Adrian. And once that happens and you're free, it only makes business sense if you're Adrian Peterson to test the market and you see what else is out there. And right now, he's still quote unquote testing the market. And I think what that tells you is there aren't any teams out there that have him as part of their plan. Meaning they're not. They're going to go into the draft hoping to draft a running back or get some young talent. Maybe a team that needs a running back doesn't find one in the draft. They may sign Adrian before camp. But if not, there are going to be injuries at the running back position throughout the year during camp, and he'll get his chance. And so he will play again. I think he'll get another opportunity. It's just a matter of the time here with the circumstances and contracts and all those things. He wasn't able to finish his career as a Viking.
And you talk about that is, you watched your career end, and you watched some really talented players. People like Chris Carter finished in Miami, and John Randall finished in Seattle. What's it like for those guys when you see those big names with high-end talent to accept the news that they're not staying anymore? You've seen it firsthand.
Yeah, Randall McDaniel finished in Tampa Bay. I mean, that's the first sign or the sign that a player's skill might be in decline or approaching the end, and that's a team is going to give you a big contract, pay you a lot of money, and then when you hit a certain point and those skills start to erode a little bit, you're not matching the value. I mean, teams are going to keep you if you are providing the value that they've paid you for or exceeding it. If you are coming up short, then they're gonna let you go. And a lot of times when that happens, other teams will step in and give a good contract. And a lot of times players need that little boost of new scenery the last couple years. I mean, you get comfortable, you get in I'm not going to call it a rut, but a routine. You hear the same voices. I mean, if you hear the same voices and the same coaches for 10 years, sometimes, a little change of scenery. We saw that with Matt Burke, too. I mean, they get a little change of scenery at the end. They get a couple more good years in, and then retire. But, yeah, for those guys, a bulk of their great works were done in Minnesota. And, I played there from 94 until 2000. That's 7 seasons. And we never had a losing season. 8-8 and 95 was the worst that we ever did. And we made the playoffs every year but 95. And that's what that group brought to this team. Just a fantastic run. And it's due to the guys like John Randall and Randall McDaniel and Chris Carter. Those are the guys that kept this team up front.
I do like the way you subtly mentioned that you never lost in your career. Are you giving credit to Denny Green for that record? Or are you taking credit for that winning record?
Yeah, I have a little piece of that pie, I guess. If being on the team and contributing. It goes back to Denny Green. I mean, that's a heck of a track record in one of, if not the most competitive sports out there in the NFL, especially with the unknowns with injuries and everything else. And I look back on Denny's tenure with the Vikings. Offensively, I don't think the guy ever made a mistake. And I mean draft pick, free agent, in any of those areas. Did he make a mistake? I mean, we stubbed our toe a few times defensively as far as personnel goes, but offensively, Denny could identify talent and he could find it where no one else did. The year we were 15-1, we had two guys from other teams' practice squads starting. One was Jeff Christie at center and went to a Pro Bowl. The other one was right guard Dave Dixon. So he found talent through the draft, through free agency, picking up guys that other teams didn't want, and then also giving guys like Warren Moon and Randall Cunningham, Chris Hinton, maybe the last year or two of their career as well.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, you talk about people that move on is, when they're not providing the value. We saw a guy move on who was only in going into his fifth year in Cordero Patterson. And, we saw him improve some, but again, he was a little bit more of a gadget player, really couldn't get deep. What were your thoughts about Cordero Patterson, his stint in Minnesota? And do you think he really does have upside now that he goes to Oakland?
Well, I do think this. Was he good to have on the team? I think absolutely. He can contribute in special teams, do some running back for you, some gadgets. Ended up being part of the receiving corps this year, to his credit. But compare that to the money he was owed in the contract. I mean, as a first-round pick, he was paid awfully well, and the money that he was probably looking for. I don't know if he would come up with that type of value. You wish him the best in Oakland. Todd Downing, who was the offensive coordinator for the Oakland Raiders, was a intern, just an assistant guy from University of Minnesota, just a young kid, 21 years old when I started coaching, and now he's an offensive coordinator. And I'm as proud of him as probably anyone, because it's great to see guys who work so hard and work as hard as Todd did be rewarded and become offensive coordinators. For Cordero, I think he's going to need to change a few things. And again, this change of scenery may help him with that as he goes to a new club, works under a guy like Jack Del Rio, who's going to demand work at practice. He's going to demand concentration. He's going to demand guys get better at everything they do. Then I think Cordero, he has a chance of being a legitimate offensive all-around type weapon. Just like I said, he's a dynamic player, but I don't know. You're not going to lose any sleep. And let me say this, too. The first mistake a player can make is to think that they're irreplaceable. Everybody's replaceable in the NFL. Coaches, front office, players, they'll find and they will find a replacement for you. So not that this is necessarily Cordero's case, or even Adrian Peterson's case. You have to take advantage of it when you can. And for Cordero's sake, I hope he does get to Oakland. Instead of learning the trick, learn the trade, not the tricks of the trade. Study, practice your rear end off, because that's really the way that you get better. And he may have some success out there. We all know he has the physical tools. It's the mental part of the game. You look at Chris Carter and Randall McDaniel, John Randall, people that I talked about earlier. Those three guys worked as hard as anyone I've seen, and yet they had the talent to boot. So they didn't rely on their physical skills to get them through games or to get them to make plays. They all continued to work mentally and physically as hard as they could, and that's what made those guys Hall of Famers.
Well, that's the question as we stay at the wide receiver spot. Is it mental? Is it physical? Is it both? First-round pick from last year, Laquan Treadwell. He seemed to work hard in the preseason, always after practice, but he seemed to drop passes in the preseason and then was a virtual ghost in the regular season. What's the current buzz about him, Pete? And do the coaches still have hope that he can be a number one wide receiver here in Minnesota?
Oh, I'm sure that they do. I don't think, to answer that question, I don't think you have to look any further than Adam Thielen. I mean, Adam Thielen went to Minnesota State, practice squad guy. Now he just signed a contract with at least $8 million guaranteed. I mean, that tells you, and this is one other reason why I love the NFL, what hard work will do for you. And physical work, mental work. Adam Thielen is the kind of guy who's never going to take his position for granted because he knows just how quickly he could lose it. He's never going to relax. He's never going to become overconfident. Sometimes you see guys who get drafted very, very highly. When they get to this level, they don't. I don't know if they necessarily realize that they are a long way away from contributing. They're not just going to show up, throw their helmet on the field, and do great things. There is a lot of work to be done. So if you look at the Treadwell versus Thielen, I mean, Treadwell is obviously a better athlete. He's a much better physical specimen. But is he a better receiver? Well, not yet. But that's why you draft those guys with those talents highly, because all you hope for is that they mentally get engaged and get in the game, and then their potential is limitless. So, I think they're going to be counting on him and hoping on him to come in. I just hope it's not another Cordero Patterson type situation where 4 years down the road we're all saying the same thing. I mean, one catch for 15 yards for a rookie campaign where you were not injured. It's going to be, to me, that's a tough nut to crack. That's a tough hill to climb. But hopefully Laquan will do that, and because we need depth at receiver. We only have 3 receivers that caught more than 10 passes last year on the roster. So they're bodies that are needed at that position.
Yeah, and I think the fans really appreciate the fact that you compared him to Cordero and not Troy Williamson. So, people are breathing a breath of fresh air there.
Yeah, I mean, that Troy Williamson is he's another example of, and I was there when they drafted Troy Williamson, and I think to understand how that worked is that Troy he was a speed guy, and he was drafted to blow the top off of the defense, to get behind the defense. And I think the one lesson that you learn with a guy like Williamson is you look for a guy with a track record of success, and that is something that Laquan Treadwell has. 2 years at Ole Miss, he was a featured receiver. So he had a great junior year, and then came back his senior year and did it again. And why is that important? Because his second year, the defenses that he played against were scheming to stop him. They were looking to stop him, and he still had that success. He was not a 1 year or a one-hit wonder, so to speak, in college. So you see 2 years of success, you're much more likely, at least at wide receiver, to have that project into your NFL career. We just haven't seen it with him yet, and that's a bit of an enigma, a bit of a mystery, and we're all waiting with bated breath that the kid comes through, and with the leadership of Bradford and hopefully Diggs and Thielen, that he'll turn that corner. But a couple good years in college, I think, says a lot. So I have more confidence in him. Patterson, another 1 year wonder at Tennessee, 2 year junior college, 1 year at Tennessee, boom, first round draft pick. Laquan has a much bigger, longer college base than those other two. So I think he has a better chance of turning it around.
Hey, before I turn your attention away from wide receiver, one guy it's a bit of an enigma, can't figure out where they use him or why they didn't use him. Jarius Wright signed a pretty decent contract, and he's good in the short passes. He can get deep, but he just disappeared unless an injury was involved. Is he part of the plans, do you think, at all in 17?
Well, I think by default right now he is. Like I said, he'd be one of the three receivers. Diggs, Thielen, and Wright are the only 3 that caught more than 10 passes last year at that position. So unless they find a guy, some free agent depth, later on, Michael Floyd would be a guy that you'd throw in that mix. I think what they need again is a receiver with some vertical. You'd like to get a receiver with some vertical that can get behind the defense. With the offense that we ran last year, that wouldn't have mattered because I don't think Bradford would have had time to even get the ball down the field like that. And Thielen actually did a real nice job of getting behind defensive backs. So you have some free agent options, but if I've seen it once, I've seen it a million times. A guy like him, he hangs in there. You get to the draft, you don't really pick anybody till late rounds because you found other guys early, or some people fell to you. And then Jarius Wright might just be on the roster again for one more year.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, if you can't be a receiver, I'd rather be an offensive lineman because Matt Khalil gets a monster $55 million contract with the Panthers, $24 million guaranteed. I got to ask this, Pete. You were a coach. How is a tackle who's rated as the 67th best starting tackle out of 64? How has he worked that much?
Well, because you've got some good intel at center. Because you have, his brother is the center, as I think most people know, at Carolina, and I know that they feel that having the two brothers together is going to help. And if they had a question about Matt, they could just go right to his brother. I mean, that's a pretty good spot to go to. And, depending on how that went and what his brother said he could do and work with them. And, Khalil is one of those guys who's just so talented that he could play a game at 90% and still do well. I remember his rookie campaign. He was finishing blocks. I mean, he had a really, really great rookie year. And then I think the injuries kind of got to him a little bit, some of the nagging things, and his game had fallen off kind of since then. So for him, if he can get healthy and get to work and get his brother involved and have someone there with him, he could live up to that contract. I mean, but that, again, for Carolina is a pretty big risk. There's a lot of ifs in that statement that need to be completed before that contract becomes worth it. But left tackles don't grow on trees. This is a passing league, and they're hard to find, and that's a premium, just like corner. So certain positions, even if you're a decent player, you're going to get paid a lot of money.
Yeah, and it's obviously the line looks completely different in Minnesota this year with Khalil going, with Brandon Fusco being released. Now we've got two new offensive tackles in free agency. You got right tackle Mike Remmers from Carolina and Riley Reif from the Lions, and he's going to return to his natural left tackle position. What are your thoughts on those two? You've seen them both play. Did we upgrade?
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely an upgrade. And, am I saying we're going to have two tackles in the Pro Bowl this year? No, I'm not saying that. I think Reif was a better right tackle than left tackle. Remmers coming in to play right tackle, though, makes, that Reif is going to move over to the left side. There's something, though, to be said about consistency. And what I mean by this, you go back to, you go back as far as Khalil, or even further, and you have players, Bryant McKinney comes to mind, who one game against a great player, they may play really, really well. And then the following week, you play a team that has a defensive end who's not as good, and they look terrible. And that inconsistency as a coach will really kill you, because if you know the limitations of your players and they give you that every single week, then you can game plan to help. You can game plan this week to help against a right defensive end, or the next week against a left defensive end, or in certain situations. But when you're getting inconsistent play out of the guys in front of you, then you don't know what to do. You can't help them. And I think both Reif and Remmers, if they provide anything, they're going to provide some consistency in play between the two positions. And that's something that, we have this absolutely lacked. And not only just a revolving door and guys, moving around and just not finding a home. So if Reif and Remmers do anything, it's going to be that. They're going to provide some consistency at the two positions. And I think the coaches, once they know their limitations and when they need to help them, will be able to do so. And it'll be better. It'll be much better than, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, if you will.
All right. Well, as we looked at free agency, a little bit of controversy happened when Red Ellison signed a big free agent contract with the New York Giants. His dad is former San Francisco 49er Ricky Ellison. I know you know him, and he ripped the Viking front office and coaching as being toxic. And I really had two questions here for you, Pete. First, why would a parent get involved on social media talking about the management of the Vikings when Rhett seemed to like how he was treated and played well with the Vikings, which resulted in getting a monster contract with the Giants? Why would he come out and do that?
Well, sometimes, as parents, you always want what's best, for your kids. And parents are entitled to an opinion, and since he played in the NFL, I think he obviously values his opinion. But for parents, you have to keep in mind you can't help. You can only hurt. So as a parent, if you talk to the media, and we saw this with Adrian Peterson's dad too at different points. We saw it with Barry Sanders and his dad at different spots. What you say isn't going to help, no matter what, unless it's the same old line of, loved your Vikings, we're great for the opportunities, thank you, and we're happy to move on. Whatever it is, you cannot help at all. So the thing is just keep your mouth shut. Stay out of the fray. Don't get involved. Reporters call, don't talk to them. You're not going to be able to do anything but harm the situation. And, that's what Ricky did. He did a lot of damage. And I don't think Rhett subscribed to a whole lot of what his dad said. And you talk about embarrassing a kid or you're worried about pulling up the school and picking your kid up in a minivan or a Prius is embarrassing. When you have your dad, saying those kinds of things, that can be embarrassing. And this goes all the way down to the youth level now. I've been involved in youth athletics, and there have been plenty of kids that have hung up on that board for a long time just because their parents are a headache. You don't see kids getting drafted because their parents are nice people, or picked sooner because their parents are just great people or whatever. You have to understand as a parent, you got to let your kid do their thing. Everyone's entitled to opinion, but you just have to be really, really cautious on how and when you're going to voice it.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that because my dad's been bugging me about giving me pointers and coming on with you, so I could tell him just go by and read a book, right?
Well, the problem is if your dad spoke up or you spoke up, who's going to listen? Just us. You know what I mean?
Well, listen, I'm going to take it completely.
Everybody's got an opinion, but we're not all in the NFL, so
that's true.
Who's going to listen?
That's true. Well, I tell you, I'm gonna take you in a completely different direction. You have no idea what I'm about to do here, but it's trying to give the fans a little bit better chance to know who you are outside the locker room and the broadcast booth. So, are you ready for some quick hitting questions about your life away from football?
Sure.
All right, here we go. You got to think about this. If you knew today was your last day on Earth, what would your final meal be?
Oh my heavens. Well, it would have. There's a pizza place in town here in St. Paul called Casetta. That's probably one of my favorites, and I'd sit down and enjoy probably an entire pizza there.
And what are your toppings? I think
that'd be big. I like I just like just cheese, sausage and onions good too, but cheese half and half, and then just keep piling it on from there.
There you go.
That's pretty good.
All right, I'm going to take you back several years here, so get ready. When you went to your high school prom, what did you wear, and what hairstyle were you rocking?
At the time, I had a flat top. So through most of high school and then through most of college, I had a flat top. It was just easy to maintain. And I remember I had a black tuxedo, but I did wear canvas Converse tennis shoes.
Nice.
Back then. Just to keep the feet comfortable. So it was all black, the regular white shirt, no frills or nothing fluffy, nothing sparkly. But yes, I did have the canvas Converse tennis shoes.
And so when you came into the league, you'd had the flat top for so many years. All of a sudden, you had the WWF, which is now the WWE. You had that hairstyle. What made you do that?
Well, in college, playing at Notre Dame and playing under Lou Holtz, we had a lot of rules regarding appearance. With hair can't be too long, and no hair on your face below your lip, and so getting out of that environment, I took advantage of it. I've been stuck. I got my hair cut every week almost for 3 or 4 years. So I said, you know what, I'm going to go in the opposite direction, and I really I didn't get my hair cut for about 2.5 years. I mean, I got it trimmed along the way, but I went a good 2.5 years and just let it grow out. Got it out of my system. It was after the Seattle game, and I believe it was 1996, but that I decided, you know what, I'm going to get it cut again. It just kept getting caught in the rivets and everything in my shoulder pads. It was just a pain in the butt. And so I went back, and I've been somewhere in between ever since.
All right. Well, this will give you, consider the hairstyle. Keep it long for this next question. It's the biggie for you, Pete. If you could arrange a rock concert with any three musicians or any three groups to play on the same bill, who would you invite?
Well, first and foremost, it would be Iron Maiden, but only if they played their, their stuff, their whole list, not necessarily their new album. Definitely, they would be the headliner. I think Metallica would have to be number 2. Their new album is absolutely fantastic, but that's in the mid to late 80s. That was the band that I grew up listening to and just loved them. And I hate to say it, but for openers, it may be AC/DC if we can resurrect Bon Scott. I think that the old AC/DC is probably my third favorite, of all the bands. And man, the number 3, the first 2, that's with a bullet. Iron Maiden and then Metallica, and then number 3, might be some old Jane's Addiction. Perry Farrell had the big dreadlocks, or it would be a bit of a dogfight for number 3.
All right, but the key is you didn't say Bee Gees, didn't say Rod Stewart on there. But I'm going to expand, and I didn't plan to do this. I'm going to expand on this question here. If I look on your phone right now with your music or wherever you keep your music, is there one that just really out of place? Do I have a disco song on there or something like that? What's on there, Pete?
Oh my God! You want to know what's out of place, or you just want to know what's on there?
No, I want to know what's really off the grid that nobody would expect you to have.
Oh my heavens! I have a lot of these old Monty Python bits that are on there that they did an album, and that's one. I think the other one that's kind of off the radar would be the Ghetto Boys. They were a rap group that was around in the early '90s. Loved those guys, so I have them on there. That might be the one that's kind of off the wall. The old Ghetto Boys. I think that'd be the one.
All right. Well, for the fans out there, I want you to know every once in a while I've seen Pete drop his phone down on game day on the desk in the media room, and if I get a chance, I'm going to scroll through it and let you know if there's anything else embarrassing. All right, Pete?
Man, this might be a little Neil Diamond in there. I like Neil Diamond. That was the first concert that I went to. My mom drugged me to it when I was too young to say no. So the first concert I really got to go to was Metallica back in 1988. But as a young man, I went and saw Neil Diamond. I still enjoy him.
All right. Well, this is only show 1. As we go through the season, we're going to find out whether you don't have show tunes on there or not.
No. Yeah. Okay. That's fair.
Well, and again, you get to expand. At some point in time, you want to ask me these embarrassing questions, you can ask me too. Well, Pete, I'll tell you what, that brings the end of this week's edition of Viking Soundbites. But it's really just a start for a great season of new content, voices that we're going to have besides you and me, and interviews we plan to bring to the fans. And we're going to come back in a couple of weeks and talk to one of your former Viking teammates, Pete, the always entertaining Mitch Berger. Any soundbite for the fans about Mitch Berger?
Mitch, he was a punter, but I think he lived the life of a rock star. Mitch had spent a long time in the NFL. He kicked the ball. I mean, they changed the rules, the kickoff rules, because of him. Back in '98, we scored all his touchdowns, and Mitch just basically kicked the ball out of the back of the end zone most of the time. But a good punter, a really, really good kickoff guy. Played a long time in the league. He has a great story about how he got into the league. It wasn't easy. He just didn't get drafted and show up. So, Mitch will be a very interesting talk.
Yeah, I talked to him at the Super Bowl. He's not shy, is he?
No, he never has been. Never will be. Very colorful. He's not a knucklehead like Chris Cluey in that respect, but he's still a knucklehead.
Well, he's promised to come in and talk about Kluy, so fans will find that interesting. And in the meantime, don't forget to follow Pete on Twitter at Pete Burcich and also at VikeFans.com. So until then, for Pete Burcich, I'm Tom Moore. So long, everyone.